This is a ballistic pendulum. It's kind of a cool experiment, and we're going to not do the experiment, we're going to do the calculation. So let me show you this little video here, because it is a video. So right here, this thing right here is a ball launcher, and it launches into this little catcher right there, a little cup. And the cup is attached to this arm, and the arm swings up. Okay, and so what we do is shoot the ball and it hits the cup, and then the cup swings up and we measure the angle, and we can use that to find the launch velocity of the ball. Okay, here we go. Sorry, I had to move the camera. See, that's me. Very easy, right? Very easy. So the ball goes up in the cup, and then the cup swings up. Okay, let's see what we got here, because this is a multi-part problem, right? So part one, the ball has an inelastic collision with the cup. Part two, the cup swings up. Okay, so let's just look at the two main parts here. So here's the first part. I have the ball. I'll call that M1. It's launched with the velocity. I'll just call it V0, and that collides with the cup of mass 2, and then that whole thing, I like to put that as my later in time, is like this, and it has a final velocity v2. Inelastic collision. Okay, momentum is conserved. After that, we have the ball and cup swinging up. Okay, and then we have a work energy problem. So here we have this problem right here. Here's a mass, and it swings up here at some angle theta. And so right here it has the velocity, we'll call that v2. Up here it has a velocity v3 equals 0. Let's work backwards. Let's take the angle that we know and find the velocity of the cup and ball right after the collision. After that, we'll go over here and find the velocity before the collision. Good plan. Okay. So starting with this problem right here, this, put it in a different color, what approach would we use to find the velocity of the ball and cup at the bottom of the swing? Well, since we have two different positions and we don't care about time, we don't care about change in momentum. There is a change in momentum, but we don't care about that. We only care about that angle. We care about the positions. This suggests it's a work energy problem. So we're going to say work is the change in energy. Now, right away, if you say work is the change in energy, you have to say, what is my system? So in this case, I'm going to pick a system of the ball and cup. I'll call it a cup. The cup plus the earth. Since I have the cup with the ball, I can have kinetic energy. So we're going to have kinetic energy 1/2 mv squared. And since I have the cup plus the earth, I can have gravitational potential energy. U is mgy. As soon as I write that, I have to say, well, where is y equal to 0? And there's no right answer. I'm going to pick, just for fun, I'm going to pick up here. That's my y equals 0. It's up at the top. So this would be negative y, and that has a length L. So with that, we do have one thing that exerts a force on the system. We don't have gravitational forces exerted on the system because that's part of the system, right? It's an interaction between the cup and the earth, so we don't have that. But we do have this little arm right here. This arm is going to exert a force on the system. However, as this force is that way and the ball moves that way, we could say work is F delta R cosine theta. But you'll notice that F and delta R along that whole path is 90 degrees, and the cosine of 90 is 0. So that force does no work because it's perpendicular to the direction it moves. So the work is 0. So we have, and let's call this position, I guess we'll call that 2 and 3, just to be consistent with up here. So the work is going to be K3 minus K2, that's my change in kinetic energy, plus U3 minus U2, that's my change in gravitational potential energy. Well, let's just start putting in our stuff. So this is going to be equal to 1/2 m v3 squared plus, and that's the mass of the cup and ball, 1/2 m v2 minus v2 squared plus mgy y3 minus mg y2. Now, because of my choice in coordinate system, there's only one of these values that is 0. I have 4 terms and one of them is 0. Which one is 0? Well, it's this one right here. Because as it swings up to the highest point, it stops before it comes back down. So that's 0. That's not 0. That's what we're trying to find. The only way the potential would be 0 is if you're all the way up at the top, which we're not. So neither of those are 0. So let's test. Okay, let's put in what we have. 0 is negative 1/2 mv2 squared plus mg. Now for y3. What's the value for y3 right here? If this has a length of L, and that's 0, this length right here is y3. And so now we have a right triangle. And the hypotenuse of that right triangle is L, and we want the adjacent side. So that's going to be equal to, I'll put it in parentheses, negative L cosine theta. It's negative because below the origin. And then down here, it just has a value of negative L. So we get negative minus mg negative L. And then I'm going to put negative right there. I'm going to get rid of that negative sign. I'm going to put plus and get rid of that. What are we trying to solve for? V2. So let's add that to the other side, subtract that from the other side. Oh, no, let's move this over here. So I have 1/2 m v2 squared is going to be mgl minus mgl cosine theta. The mass cancels. I multiply by 2, and I get v2 is the square root of 2. I have some stuff I'm going to factor out. GL 1 minus cosine theta. Box. So now I know the velocity of the stuff after the collision. So that's pretty good. Let's put that expression over here so we don't get rid of it. V2. You could plug in a number if you want, but you don't have to, right? I don't want to. And I'm not going to do it because I don't want to. 2GL 1 minus cosine theta. And I'm going to move my box too. I gotta take my box with me. Okay. Great. Now we can go to the part before that, the inelastic collision. So remember, in an inelastic collision, we have the force that the ball exerts on the cup, the force that the cup exerts on the ball. Those are equal and opposite forces, because Newton's third law, and they happen for the same time, so they have equal and opposite changes in momentum, and that's where momentum is conserved comes from. So let's call this the x direction. And so now you can see that we only have motion in the x direction, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I can say P1 equals P2. These are both x direction. I'm going to write them as scalars because we don't have to worry about components. So in the beforehand, we have, I messed up a little bit. We have M1 V1 plus M2 times 0 because it was at rest. And then afterwards, we have M1 plus M2 times V2. Well, now I just have to solve for V1. That's not too bad. V1 is going to be equal to M1 plus M2 V2 over M1. And I know V2. So let's just put in that and get one giant expression. M1 plus M2 over M1 times the square root of 2GL 1 minus cosine theta. And let's just check, right, because it should have units for velocity. So here I have kilograms over kilograms, so that has no units. Here I have meters per second squared times meters, which is meters squared per second squared, and then 1 minus cosine theta doesn't have units, and 2 doesn't either. So I take the square root of meters squared per second squared, I get meters per second. So it does have the right units. Let's just check something else. What if you increase the angle, then I should have a larger velocity. That should indicate a larger launch velocity. So as this angle gets bigger, it gets closer to 0, right? Yeah. And so this becomes closer to 1, and so we get a greater number right there. What if I have a larger mass and it swings that same amount? Then it should be going faster too. So if M2 increases, so those things kind of make sense. Let's go ahead and put in our numbers. V1 is going to be M1. Notice right here that since I have a ratio of masses, I actually don't need to convert these to kilograms because whatever units they are, they're going to cancel. So I'm going to leave them as grams. 66 plus 237, those are close to the actual values I got from the device, divided by 66, and then have the square root of 2 times 9.8 times 0.25 times 1 minus cosine of 34. And let's put that in our calculator. I have my calculator. 66, 237 plus 66 divided by 2, enter, 9.8 times 0.25 times 1, enter, 34 cosine minus times square root times. And I get 4.2 meters per second, which seems reasonable. I don't know, but you know, the cool thing about this experiment is that you could then take that same ball and then launch it off a table and onto the floor and measure how high it was and how far it went and use that to get the launch velocity too and see if those two values agree. That'd be pretty cool. Okay, we did it. Ballistic pendulum. Oh, I do want to tell you a short story. I was once an undergraduate physics student, and I was studying physics. And we had a physics lab, and we did this lab. But we didn't have that nice Pasco ball catcher ballistic pendulum setup. No, we had a cup. And our ball launcher wasn't a ball. It was a rifle. So our professor, who was not young, I think it was a 22, but still, I don't really know. And so he said, okay, move off to the side, and he's going to shoot the rifle bullet into the cup. And then we were going to, we were off to the side. This is a long time ago. We were off to the side to measure how high it went. Yeah, I was not too excited about that class at that time because, old guy with a gun in a physics lab. But we did it. Much easier with this. The end. Later.